morning, everybody. My name is Darlene and I have Parkinson's. Today is going to be a little bit of a different video. I've been struggling a couple of days here with having a cold and whatnot, but I'm feeling quite well today. So other than the fact that, my nose is still running and whatnot, but it's going to be a very difficult day on Friday for me, which is tomorrow, the day that you're seeing this. That's going to be 1 year since my father passed away. And he was a big force in my life. I lost my mom in 2010, and he was the last of the upper echelon generation. And my brother was caring for him, and he cared for him for over 10 years, and he passed away last year in October. So I wanted to remember him a little bit, and I put a few pictures in here. But I also wanted to tell you a few stories about him so that you could maybe feel more what makes me who I am, because he was a big part of my life. I put a couple of notes down here, so just one look at him. There was one day, I only have to put a couple of words down, and I can remember this day vividly. We were living in Edmonton, and they have a celebration every year called Klondike Days. And my mom had made matching outfits for all of us. And here was my dad dressed ever so dapper with a little bow tie and everything. And all of our clothing matched as if we were in the 1800s. And we went and celebrated this Klondike Day. And I have a picture of that. And I look at that picture and I think, what a good sport he was to dress up looking like kind of an idiot. But Mom wanted to do this, and he just went right along with it. So that was part of it. Then in the same place, living in Edmonton, we didn't see Dad very often because it was one and only time in his life that he had a job that he had to travel for. He always worked for the same company, but this one he had to be on the road. He was auditor, so he had to go and audit the books at all the different international harvester places. So he was on the road all the time. He was home every second weekend. So literally 4 days a month we would see him, unless he had holidays. And yet somehow or other, we always, I don't remember it as a big loss at the time because he made us feel so special on those 4 days. But anyway, I was up at the mall with my friends, and for some reason, it never had dawned on me that this was the weekend that he was going to be in town. So I was up at the mall with my friends, and we see this person coming down the mall. And we were all commenting on what a crazy this guy this was, with his big orange garbage can on the top of his head like he was wearing a top hat. And as he got closer, I realized it was my dad. And I was so embarrassed because all my friends saw this crazy fellow with this giant orange garbage can on his head, and he comes right up, I thought I'd welcome everybody to town here. Oh, I laughed so much about it because he embarrassed me so good, and he thought it was the funniest thing he ever had done. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so that was a couple things I remembered. I have a picture of little Aurora, my newest little granddaughter, wearing a crocheted hat, little bonnet, with strings on it and whatnot. And that hat was my dad's hat when he was an infant. So Dad died in his 80s, so this hat would be approximately 86 years old. And we have a picture of Aurora with that hat on. So I treasure that because, we know that as generations have come and gone, that hat has continued. So that hat continues on in our family. Then there was another time that Mom wanted to go back to Ireland for a visit. And so Dad said, well, I don't have any holiday time other than what I have booked later on in the year. So he said, if you want to go, unfortunately, I won't be able to go with you. You'll have to go on your own. And Mom thought about it. She said, well, I won't take very long. She says, I'll take 2 weeks and I'll just go and visit everybody. So Dad said that was fine. So Mom was very concerned that Dad would eat properly when she was gone. So she had made 1 week's worth of frozen dinners for him in the freezer. And he was supposed to, after he'd eaten something from one of the dishes, just wash it and leave it on the counter. And she'd made arrangements that I would go over on the 7th day and I would fill those next week's worth of dishes with some food so that he could, again, have food for the following week. Even when she was away, Mom was a provider, so she wanted to make sure that he had that. She hadn't been gone 2 days until he phoned me up one day and said, Darlene, has Claudine got a passport? And I said, no. And he says, can you get her one really fast? And I said, well, I know there's a way of getting a passport quickly if we want to, yes. And he said, well, get her a passport, because he says, I miss your mother and I'm going to Ireland. And just like that, before the first week was up, he and Claudine had flown off to Ireland, and he'd only told one person, and that person was the one who was going to pick him up from the airport. And he and Claudine walked into, I guess she'd gone over to somebody's house or a relative's house for a tea or whatever. And in they walked with my Uncle James, and in they walked her and Claudine. It took Mom a minute to even register that it was there. Dad said to her, he said, yeah, I got you an extra week off, and we're here for 2 weeks, and so now you'll get a 3-week holiday. So anyway, he missed her so much in that 2 days that he followed her to Ireland to have the holiday with her. You could tell that my parents loved each other. You knew it. He never kissed her once, ever. He would always kiss her 3 times, and they were the loudest smacks you ever heard in your life. And we would hear him when he would come home, giving her a kiss or whatever, and it would be always these 3 loud smacking kisses. It's one of the things that we remember about him. Or when he sneezed, it was a loud sneeze. It was just part of who he was. And we didn't have any ability to have a lot of music in our house. We had an old record player that was a console. And so we had a few 78s and whatnot that we could listen to. But other than that, I had a little tiny 45 record player for something that we got at a garage sale somewhere. And I had one little record disc, and it was on. And it was Elvis Presley on one side and singing a different song on the other side. And I never even heard of Elvis Presley, but I listened to those 2 songs over and over and over when I was a youngster. And when he retired, that's what the family had bought for him for a retirement gift, was a ghetto blaster so that he could have music in the house. So that was when he first started to listen to some music, and he loved Irish music. He really, really cottoned onto the Irish music and loved it. Let's see, sneeze aloud. His hands on the table. Banging his hands on the table. Right. If we went to sneeze, and Claudine wrote this down for me, and I was like, what has she written there? And when he would go to sneeze, he would bang on the table as he was doing it, so as if to put a punctuation mark at the end of the sneeze. Oh, for heaven's sakes. What a funny thing to remember. He also used to take Claudine all the time, and there was a Dairy Queen down at the end of our street, and he would take her down. They would walk all the way down to this Dairy Queen, and they would have a strawberry sundae. And she remembers so well going to the Dairy Queen for strawberry sundaes. I don't think she'll ever sit in a Dairy Queen and eat a sundae without thinking about how many times Grandpa took her for that. He also was one for teaching lessons. Like if he could teach you something without it becoming a huge issue, he taught the lesson. Well, one day, Claudine loved to play cards, still does. Loved to play cards, and they were playing cards, and Grandpa caught her cheating. And he always said, you doesn't matter whether you have a good hand or a bad hand, it's fun to just play the game. Well, anyway, he caught her making a little cheating move on this card game. He never said a word. He just gathered his hand up, put it all in a pile, and set it down in front of him, and got up and excused himself from the table. And she said, Grandpa, aren't you coming back? And he says, no, I don't play with cheaters. And he didn't say another word about it, and she never cheated again. It's like she knew that Grandpa didn't play with cheaters. If you were going to cheat, he wouldn't play with you. So she made sure that she didn't do that. So those are just a few. There is so many things that I could remember about him. He was, I wrote a poem one time for him, and I had it framed. Well, it's not really a poem. I put different words to the old Beverly Hillbillies songs. And I put it down. I wrote it on a piece of paper and hung it in the house. And that paper hung in their house in a frame for years. And as the time went by, the words faded and faded and faded. And then one day my brother typed them all up on a typewriter and put them in behind glass, and that was how it still hangs, and it hangs in my bedroom like that. Anyway, those are just a few things, and I know it's going to be a tough day when I'm thinking about all the things, but while it's going to be a tough day, I'm also going to be smiling because I know he's with Mom, and I know they're happy. Anyway, I'm going to put a few pictures in here now, and I hope you're all doing well, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.